Three keys to a life of brilliance. I'm Dr. Michelle Pedicolis. I'm an inner game expert, and I empower women leaders and change makers, even those who don't know that they're leaders and change makers, to face their fears so that they can step into their power. No regrets. Do you know what the number one regret of the dying is? According to hospice nurse Bronnie Ware, who wrote the book, 5 Regrets of the Dying, the number one regret of the dying is not living a life true to yourself. Not living a life true to yourself. Well, what does that mean? Well, choreographer and nationally known modern dancer Martha Williams gives us a hint. She says there is an energy, a life force, a power, a quickening that is translated through us into action. And since there is only one of us in all time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will not exist in all of time, in any form. And the world will not have it. It is not your business to judge how good it is, how valuable it is, or how it compares with any other expression. Your business is to keep the channel open. So how are you doing? Are you keeping your channel open? Thought leader Marianne Williamson says that our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. Is that your fear? Are you afraid of being who you truly are? Do you play small? Do you struggle with self-doubt? Are you overbusy, overstressed, overwhelmed? Do you put other people's needs ahead of your own? Well, you're not alone. An American medical expenditure panel did a study, and they found out that 1 out of 6 Americans are on some sort of psychiatric drug, either antidepressants, tranquilizers, anti-anxiety medications. And that doesn't even count all the Americans who are self-medicating through drinking and drugs and TV and computer games and overeating and overbusyness. Why? Blocking the channel, not allowing our brilliance to come through. Because in holding this down, it creates a lot of stress. And so we distract ourselves. Would you like to know 3 keys to unblocking your brilliance? Yes? Great. I'm going to share that tonight. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you a little bit about myself so you understand why you even want to listen to me. So as I told you, I'm an inner game expert, and I empower women leaders and change makers. I'm a national speaker, and I lead workshops all over the country. Places like the Commonwealth Club of San Francisco, UCSF Medical Center, JFK University, University of California, Berkeley, and National Palliative Care, Hospice and Palliative Care Organization. I have appeared on Voice America's Leadership Stars, Empowering Women, KDIA's Aging by the Bay, KPFA's Women's Magazine, BBM Global's Courage to Overcome. I produced the award-winning documentary film series, Secrets of Life and Death, which is screened in universities all over the United States, Canada, and Australia. I have a PhD in sociology and over 18 years helping women through life challenges. And you know what I found? That the core, at the root of their problems, are early childhood wounds that keep them small. Which brings me to the 3 keys, and they all begin with the letter B. In order to do that, I'm going to share a PowerPoint, so bear with me. Oops, hold on. Slideshow, start. Okay, so you've gotten a hint. So the first one, they all start with the letter B, is brilliance. Brilliance is that life force that Marianne Williamson talks about. We come into the world with this brilliance, our spark of life, our purpose, our power, our potential. We are these seeds ready to burst forth and create these great trees. But we come into this 3-dimensional plane in bodies. Number 2B, body. And the body is an amazing vehicle for getting us through life. They're adaptive, expanding, growing, mobile, dexterous, self-healing. And if we take really good care of them, they will last a lifetime. Bodies have their own agenda. They want to stay alive. And we come into these bodies when we're very young, very small, very vulnerable, very dependent. We depend on our caregivers, our parents. And you know what? It's really hard to be perfect parents. Sometimes our parents are over-controlling, overprotective, maybe too judgmental, too critical. Maybe they're neglectful. Maybe they're even abusive. And these all trigger a survival response in the body. The survival response is a very rudimentary system of fight, flee, and freeze. And when we are in this survival mode, brilliance goes offline. We are operating from the lower brainstem. Now, this doesn't work really too well. I mean, it has some mechanisms that help, like fleeing might kind of teach us how to hide or get out of the way if we need to. But we have another helper, and this is the 3rd B. This is brain. We are endowed with these amazing brains. In particular, I'm talking about the cerebral cortex, which comes up with these great ideas for keeping body safe. See, brain doesn't even want body to experience the fear. So it comes up with plans, with behavior patterns and beliefs that will keep the body safe. Plans like being accommodating or pleasing, or maybe invisible, or maybe shape-shifting, or controlling, or maybe even rebellious. Any one of these patterns in order to make sure the body survives. Now this works well, maybe in childhood, but they don't work so well in adulthood. They block brilliance. So I would like to share a little of my own story so that you understand how this dynamic works. I was born into a family where there were two other children already born. And I was born to a very young mother. I was the straw that broke the camel's back. She couldn't cope. She was overwhelmed. I did not bond with her. Instead, I bonded with my father. And I was in bliss. He was very attentive. He was very loving. He was very nurturing. He was very caring. And I felt safe. But my father was a man. And he was in the military. And when I was 2 years old, he was transferred to Japan. I was devastated. I don't know how long he was gone, but for a 2-year-old, it was long enough for me to lose my trust in myself, in my father, and in my own brilliance. My brain said, "Hey kid, you're not good enough." And so I became a people pleaser. I tamped down my emotions and took into my own hands the process of taking care of myself. If I pleased people, they would take care of me. And this worked really well for a long time. Kept my mother happy, off my back. Did really well in school. National Honor Society in high school, Phi Beta Kappa in college, one of 2 graduate students to get my PhD. But then, I went out into the real world. I got my first job as a college professor at a small Midwestern college in Minnesota. And I did everything. Joined a faculty meetings, clubs, signed up for teacher trainings, taught extra classes. I even coached the women's cross-country team. But you know what? My students needed me to lead, and all I knew how to do was please. You know the old saying, well, you can't please all of the people all of the time. I lost that job, and I was blown away. My plan didn't work. So Brain came along and said, "Kid, I got another plan." And the plan was to only take jobs in which they needed me more than I needed them. So I tamped down my education, underplayed my intelligence, and forgot about my brilliance. And this worked for a while. But then my husband left me. There was that abandonment, that rejection. Oh, did I hate rejection. So my brain came along and said, I've got another plan. We're going to join a spiritual community where relationships don't matter. And so I joined a spiritual community where my only relationship was with the divine. Fortunately, this was a practice of the heart. And so my heart opened and I reconnected to my brilliance. I reconnected to spirit. So that by the time my current husband showed up in my life, and he actually showed up at this retreat, my heart was open. And I was ready for love. Well, not quite. I had to do some very early childhood healing because I found out that out in the world, my brain came back online. And I had some patterns and behaviors that would really interfere, that fear of being rejected, of being abandoned. And so I did the healing. And just as I finished that program, my parents began to leave this three-dimensional planet. First, my father from Alzheimer's, and then my mother from breast cancer. The good news is that I was able to finish up business. I was able to forgive them for being imperfect parents and to say goodbye. The bad news was I could feel my feelings and I was overwhelmed. I also was curious. So I decided that I needed to find out what this was about death that opened me up. But I wanted to make a film, and I was scared. And I remembered this one moment that I had with my mother before she died. We were sitting in her office. She was a toy designer. And we were looking through some of her drawings, actually copies of her drawings. And I asked her, "Do you need this?" I was trying to clean up her office. And she looked, and she put her hands in front of her mouth. She sighed, and she said, "Oh, I guess I'll never get to that project." And I moved back about 3 miles and said, "Oh, I guess we don't need to deal with this right now." I thought I was protecting her, but actually I was protecting myself, my feelings. But I never forgot that. I never forgot her regret. And I realized that I did not want to reach the end of my life with regrets. And that gave me the courage to make my films. That helped me to move forward, to step into my brilliance. My mother didn't really need to worry. She was a role model for stepping into brilliance. She lived her life fully on purpose. So the other thing that I learned from all of this was death, facing death and loss is a really great way to connect with your courage, to give you the motivation to step into your brilliance. But I also learned that you don't need to wait till somebody dies. Any kind of loss or difficulty is enough to give you the impetus to step into your brilliance, to change it. So let's go back to our triangle again and talk about each of these in turn and how to bring them into balance. Remember in my story of my husband that although my heart was open, when I got it back into the regular world and away from the retreat, my brain got in the way and started getting those old patterns of fear activated. So in order for all of this to work, we need to have them in harmony. So how do we do that? Well, we have to take action. We have to do something to bring them into harmony. So let's start with brilliance. My spiritual teacher used to say, half time for world, half time for spirit. Wow, that's quite an equation. Yet if we start to spend time with our brilliance, with our gifts, we are actually connecting to spirit. And so if we do that every day, we connect and we tap in, we actually are moving towards that equation, that balance. And when we are in our brilliance, we are actually in what some scientists call the zone. We actually start to attract the things that we need to manifest our brilliance. After my first year at Sufi camp, the spiritual camp that I was at, there was a break between the 2 months of camp and the extension. We had a day off. And I took a group of students with me in my trusty VW van. I was taking them to a pueblo to see a harvest dance. The pueblo was Acoma, Sky City. On the way, we stopped off in Albuquerque to pick up another student. And in stopping, something happened to my van. It wouldn't start again. And in that moment, I could feel that old pattern of wanting to cry and complain and whine and have a meltdown. But I had just been doing 2 months of spiritual practice, and it felt at odds. And so I decided not to do that, to trust. And I pulled out my old trusty idiot manual. They had them back then. You could actually work on your own car. Went into the engine and diagnosed what was wrong. And just as I figured out what was the problem, a man shows up in my shoulder and he says, "May I help you?" And I laughed and I said, "Well, only if you were a VW mechanic." And he said, "Well, actually I am." And so I laughed again and I said, "Well, great. Do you happen to have the part that I need?" And I explained what I had figured out. And he said, "Well, I don't know. Let me check in my shop." And he had a shop just there in his garage. And he came out, he had the part. He not only had the part, he put the part in my car. And after thanking him profusely and paying him the $5 for the part, I drove off in my van with my German students. And as I reached the highway, it dawned on me it was Labor Day. None of the other shops were open. And I realized the magic of that moment when I decided to choose brilliance over fear. So you might want to ask yourself, what are your own special talents? What is your brilliance? What would it mean to step into your brilliance? What would that give you for your life? Some of us have particular talents that we already know about. Like maybe we're good at yard sales, or maybe we're good at cooking, or maybe we're good at gardening. So that's a way to start to connect with your deeper brilliance, your purpose. Mm-hmm. So let's now look at body. The body speaks to us very simply through pain and pleasure. When it's upset, it says so through pain. And when it's happy, it gives us pleasure. In childhood, our messages got messed up. We were taught the wrong things. We were taught to be fearful. We were taught to tamp our brilliance down. We were taught that our authentic self was not safe. And so we created these patterns of behavior to protect us. And these beliefs like not good enough, or not lovable, or not enough, or alien. And these kept us safe, but they also prevented us from connecting with our brilliance. So when we try to change these behaviors, this will trigger fear, because we remember that that wasn't safe as a child. And it triggers that fight, flee, freeze mechanism. So it might make us angry, and we might act out, or we might try and control things, or we might flee and run away, or we might sabotage ourselves to prove, see, it doesn't work. So what can you do? Well, you can get curious. You can check in with your body and see where that fear is and learn to release it. How do you release it? Well, if you just stay with your sensations in your body, you can actually release the energy in 2 minutes or less. And I have a special gift to give you at the end of our webinar, and that is my stress release body scan. It's an audio, a downloadable audio that will help you to learn the language of your body and help you to release your fears. So now let's look at the brain. How do we get the brain on board? So we get the brilliance on board by connecting with what it is that we love to do, to connect with our special talents, to connect with spirit. And the body we bring on board by calming it down, by learning to listen to it. Brain's another story. Our thoughts can hold us back, and our thoughts can trigger our body. We can think about things that might happen if we step into our brilliance. Oh, we might be rejected. Oh, things won't work out. We'll be out on the street. We'll lose all our money. We'll be abandoned. We'll lose our job. All those fear thoughts that work against us. So we need to start changing our story. We need to start changing our thoughts. I had a client once who came to me. She was very upset. Her parents were aging. They had dementia. And she had put them in an assisted living. And then her sisters took them out and put them somewhere else and started conspiring behind her back. And she was very, very angry. Because she had this story about how she needed to be in control. Because when she was a child, she had dysfunctional parents. And in order to be safe, she had to control things. She was the oldest. Well, guess what? Her sisters did not appreciate it. And so they took it out of her hands. Well, we worked on her story. And her story was that she had to tamp down who she really was in order to be safe. Well, she didn't need to do that anymore. I encouraged her to step into her brilliance and to feed her spirit. And things started to shift. And suddenly, she had a whole different way of interacting with her family. Now, sometimes we self-sabotage. Our brain sets us up for failure to prove that, of course, what the brain tells us is the truth. I had a friend who called me up one time. She said she had had food poisoning and she had made plans to have lunch with a friend. And when she called the friend to cancel, she asked her friend if her friend would forgive her for canceling and would she take her to the hospital because she was having food poisoning. And the friend said, no, that's okay. I can make some other plans. And I said, Mary, why didn't you call me? How could you? She said, well, after I had been rejected, I just couldn't face asking anybody else. You see, I asked her, Mary, is this person the kind of person who would do that? She said, well, yes, she is a little self-centered. So you see, we often will set up to confirm our beliefs. So if you believe that you're the only one who can take care of your parents, then, of course, you will sabotage the help of your siblings, or you will even make them alienated. If you believe that you are the only one who can do a job well, then anytime you hire somebody to help you, they will not do as well as you. If you believe that if you take care of yourself, terrible things will happen. Terrible things will happen because we will attract what we are afraid of. So another thing to notice is that brilliance wants us to succeed. Brilliance wants us to fulfill our power and purpose, to fulfill our mission in life. And so it often introduces bumps in the road, like my husband leaving me, or maybe that first job not working out, to teach us that we need to step into our brilliance. At least I'm inviting you to think about those bumps in the road as brilliance giving us a nudge. Now there's one other element that I haven't talked to you about, one final key, the fourth key. And that is community. When we were born into a community, the community of our family. And that set into motion the whole dynamic of our lives. We were introduced to fear and tapping down our feelings and controlling our behavior and playing small and playing safe, mainly tapping down our brilliance. Community in adulthood can often reflect the community that we had as a child. Because we expect them to behave a certain way, that's what we attract. So when we try and change things, oftentimes our community doesn't support us. Like I said before, we attract that. We have a daughter or child who has a crisis every time we start to work on our projects. Or maybe we have a parent that gets sick every time we start to get momentum. Or maybe we have a spouse who undermines us or discourages us or judges us every time we try to take a step. So we might need to upgrade our community in order to step into our brilliance and to step out of this cycle. We need all four of them to work together. Okay, so in a few more moments, I am going to open the line and invite you to ask your questions. But before I do that, well, I want you to start writing down what some of your questions might be. There's a chat room. You might click on chat at the bottom. There's a little circle balloon which says chat, and you click on that and you can actually type in your questions. But before I open the lines, to answer any of the questions you might have about what I've just shared with you, and I know we're moving fast, that's great. So there'll be lots of time to ask any questions that you might have about your own situation. I want you to take a moment to ask yourself what your life would be like if you had your brilliance fully online, if you were completely living your life according to your brilliance. What would you be able to do, be, and have? And just take a moment to think about that. And in fact, if you have an answer, please go ahead and write that in the chat. What would you be able to do, be, or have? How would your life be different? What would you be doing? And then I want you to ask yourself, what's stopping you? What of those 4 key elements is holding you back? Are you not completely stepping into your brilliance? Have you been tapping that down? Or is fear or self-doubt holding you back? Or are thoughts, disempowering thoughts, holding you back, discouraging you? Or is it your community? Do they get upset or activated every time you start to step into your power? And so you can write that down if you want. I've shared some steps that you can start to take to change those blocks, those things that are getting in the way of your brilliance. For example, really allowing yourself to enjoy your brilliance, what you love to do, what your special gifts are, what can you manifest easily and connecting with that. Or your body, learning to listen to your body, and understanding that when there's pain, it's time to listen. Something's out of whack. And how to start to calm your body. And brain, starting to change your story so that it becomes an empowering story, and starting to change your language so that you don't undercut yourself. And finally, to upgrade your community. I don't mean that you have to throw out your family and friends, but you may need more people, bring more people into your life that actually help you to step into your power. For some of you, this might be enough. For others, well, we've developed these patterns from early childhood, and it may take more than that to start to change them. So I would like to offer you a couple of steps to move you forward. Now, the first one, I've already promised you. That's the stress release body scan audio, which I'm going to put a link over here. And you who are on the telephone, you might want to put in your email in the chat box so that I can send you the link. But this stress release body scan will help you to get into your body and start to learn to find out where the stress is, where the fear is, and release it. So I'm going to put that in the chat box, the link where you can download it right now. It's right there. And oh, thank you, Shelby. Today you are your very own BEW mechanic. Your words are exactly what I need to hear. Thank you, Shelby. And I hope you also will write down what it is that you want to bring into being, what it would be to be brilliant. Okay, so stress release body scan. The other thing I want to offer you, I want to invite you to a 6-week Release Your Brilliance journey. And in this journey, you are going to be in a community of like-minded people who will support you and encourage you and inspire you and help you to activate your brilliance. This 6-week journey is a virtual journey. You don't have to go anywhere. You can do this right in your own home. You don't have to get on a plane. You don't have to get in a hotel. You can do it right in the comfort of your own home. And in these 6 weeks, we are going to boost your brilliance. We're going to help you master your bratty body and control your bossy brain. And you are going to have the community that's going to help you to move forward. So in the first 2 weeks, we're going to focus on brilliance. We're going to help you to identify what it is that you are wanting and help you to amplify that so that you actually start to raise your vibration and attract it into your life. So that you start to see results, you start to see the signs of land. And this will form the ground, the anchor, so that when you begin to work on your body and your brain, you will have that safety zone, that you will have that brilliance anchored into your body. So then in the next 2 weeks, we're going to work on the body and the brain. How to calm the body and to identify the triggers that activate the body so that you can relax and calm the body, calm the inner child, and make her or him feel safe. And we're going to work on the brain, not only to change the overarching stories, but actually the words that we use day to day that are disempowering. And learn to speak in a different way, to notice when we are disempowering ourselves, when we are actually calling in what we don't want. Shelby. She says, my challenge is my community. Considering I have been doing my homework on the mind, body, and spirit, I found myself surrounded by people who are not as positive about what I think would be best for me. Thank you, Shelby. Great for sharing. Yes, our community. So we don't throw our community out, but we draw in, we attract in those that are going to support us. And that's what this 6-week Release Our Brilliance journey is all about. In the last 2 weeks, what we're going to do is we're going to set in motion a plan to keep the momentum going. Create an action plan and create a support system, an accountability system that will keep the momentum going. So 6 weeks. The value of this program is easily around $600. And in addition, for the first 10 people who sign up, I want to offer a one-on-one virtual VIP call to help you to identify your specific issues and help you to work through them, to give you the tools and the exercises to help you to change. So the value of that together is almost $900. But I want to make this super easy for you. I want to tell you, I just finished this series with another group of women. This works. I had one woman who told me just today that it not only changed her way of thinking, but it started to change her husband's way of thinking. She is a house sitter, and she sits and takes care of some of these amazing houses. And instead of feeling jealous, instead of feeling bad about her own house, she's looking around and she's finding what she can do to bring into her own house. And her husband is getting on board with her. Wow. And another woman in that program said that she's noticing how she thinks. She goes out for walks and she notices how her thoughts are and starting to change them. And also noticing how synchronicities are happening and how good things are coming into her life. So this journey is for you if you are tired of playing small. If you are ready to step out of the shadow and into your brilliance. If you are tired of struggling, of lack of success, self-doubt, and overwhelm and stress. If you are ready to claim your power and purpose. If you want to live and die without regret.